Hey guys, welcome back to my garage. Today, I'm going to help you identify your early Ford transmission and its parts. So with these transmission being somewhere around 80 years old, they were drivers, high school kids drove them. They've been beat to death, put in hot rods, put behind Hemis, all sorts of stuff. So when you identify one of these transmissions, you look at the case, you identify it by the number on the back, which we'll go over, but that doesn't mean that's what you have. There could be different things on the inside. You can run into a side loader that has Zephyr gears in it. A lot of people just throw the side loaders out because they're not hot rod style transmissions. But if you look inside of it and you had Zephyr gears, you threw it away, you just threw away the best gear set you could possibly put in one of these early Fords. So you guys need to be able to identify the transmission case, the transmission parts, the shift tower, all that kind of stuff. We're going to go over all that for you guys. Because I don't want you guys to pass up on a case that has the best gears you could possibly get in it, or a earlier case that has non-synchronized transmission, which you don't want. So let's get started on all that information. So let's start with identifying the cases themselves, because this is the easiest part. Now, these cases have an identification number right here on the back. So I'll show you an up close of what that looks like. What's important, or for me, what's important, everybody wants something different out of their transmission, but a 78. A 78 case is the case that can hold synchronizers. We have another one here, an 18 case. There's a bunch of numbers on the back of it, but the most important part is the number at the beginning. An 18 case is the earlier cases. They did not have synchronizers. They didn't have brass synchronizers. So if you're a hot rodder and you want something that's going to drive nice, or you're a restorer and you just want a little bit better drivability out of your transmission, I definitely recommend at least getting the synchronized gear set. Now, you can put the synchronized gear set in earlier cases, but they require a couple modifications to the case, some clearance issues. So it's not just throwing in newer style gears in an older case. There is modifications to be had. Now, something that's going to throw you guys for a loop. So we have the clear as day serial number right here on the back. On the later cases, like ABA style cases, so we're going to say an F1 pickup truck from 49 to 53, when they use these transmissions, the later cases are definitely a better casting. So we can see a different quality from case to case right here. This one can be an open drive shaft or a closed torque tube drive shaft, but what makes it better is it's just the better casting, and the case number is here on the side. It's actually casted in, and just better quality, guys. Now they have these stampings right here, but I don't want you guys to worry about that. We're not going to go down the rabbit hole too much because there's enough information in this video by itself, but we can go down the rabbit hole in a rabbit hole video. But what you want to be looking for is the number here and not the one that's on the front of the case up here. So another identifier to a case that can hold synchronized gear sets is this dip right here on the front of it. This is a clearance dip. That's what you have to grind out to put synchronizers in an earlier case. It's a really crummy area to get to. So if you're going to be grinding that out, it's nice to know a machinist buddy that can just machine that out pretty nice for you. But that's putting a bunch of money into an older case when you could get a nicer case like this one. So here's our nicer case with the case number here, 78. Much better quality case. All right, so here in the video, I'm going to show you what a Lincoln Zephyr case has. I don't have it here right now. It was in my shop earlier. I only had pictures. I wish I got better video of it. But here it is side by side with a 39 transmission case. So it's a Zephyr case. It looks a little bit crooked, a little cockeyed for some reason. I don't know why they did it that way. It's something to do with where the shift tower comes out to the side of the transmission, not the top, but it's still a stick that comes up through the floor. And it has to do with the placement of the dash in the Zephyr. That's why everything's a unique shape in that setup. But I want you to know what a Zephyr case looks like, and I want you to know how the shift tower goes on it, because that's a huge identifier of one of the better early Ford transmissions. Now burn that image into your brain in case you're out picking somewhere and you see one of those for sale. Definitely buy it. That's one of the best transmissions for the early Fords that you could possibly get. And I know for a fact, a lot of the land speed records with flatheads back in the late 50s, they used Zephyr gears inside of their early Ford transmissions. I interviewed Gene Winfield himself, and he confirmed that for me back in the late 50s. That's exactly what everybody was doing at the salt flats. Now, if you're going to be running a transmission with synchronizers in it, make sure you get a shift tower that can actually control those synchronizers, because they are not the same. We have a 39 transmission shift tower here. Then we have a non-synchronized shift tower, probably 1936 is my guess. And what's important, the difference is the width of these forks. Now, the non-synchronized width here, it is 2 7/8, but the most important one here, the synchronized one, is 3 inches. I can tell you that all day from memory. So 3 inches. Now, you're gonna think, can I just grind that? Because that 7/8, 1/8, that's not really that big of a difference. Well, it's not. And if that worked out that way, I wish it did. The offset is different here in the arm. The offset's different here in the arm. So even if you ground it bigger and you threw it on a synchronized transmission, that synchronizer hub is actually located different, which we'll go over here in a minute, but keep that in your mind. I want to finish this here. All right, so what we have here is a shift tower for unsynchronized transmission. And one of the tall tales, that lets you know which one's which, just off this tower here, is this spring and detent that's underneath this screw hole right here. There's only one on this side, and there's not one on that side. So what this is just a screw, spring, and a ball detent that rides again on the rod that's hooked to the shift forks. So there's little notches cut out in this rod, and when you put it in gear, it actually helps it lock into gear. Now, one problem a lot of early Ford guys have is when I get into second and I get into it, get on the throttle, it pops it back into neutral. That's very frustrating. There's 2 key reasons why it does that. One is because this spring is worn out, the detent's messed up, or that rod is worn out and kind of lost the cut for the detents. Another one is the spring inside of the synchronizer hub itself. So this one has that detent in second and third. It does not have that detent in first and reverse. So let's go over to the synchronized one. And you can see here we have detents on both sides. So this is going to have a detent first and second, and first and reverse. So it's going to help lock it in place. So keep that in mind, guys. If you have an early Ford transmission, when you're giving it throttle, it pops it back into neutral. This is one of the things that solves it. That synchronizer hub spring is another. Now, before I told you these are offset. So one is further out than the other. I'm going to show you why. So you can see how this one is central. This one is not central. So that is the offset. So if you go with the synchronizer hub, it is not going to work with the unsynchronized forks. They're offset different. Then also why I have you guys, I just want to explain the other part of popping out of gear on acceleration is we have these detents here. These get replaced with every rebuild. If they did not, you need to send your transmission to a different rebuilder. Here's the spring. The original, it only came with a spring on one side. I put the spring on both sides on my rebuilds to give you just a little bit better slot and placement. And these get worn out. So whenever you're rebuilding these, make sure you replace that. And if yours pops out of gear, rebuild the whole transmission while you're at it. Now let's go over transmission mounts really quick. So both of these are 18 cases. So the early cases that will not take synchronizers without that modification down there for clearance. But this one has a 39 transmission mount. This one has a 36 style transmission mount. This whole piece comes out, and this rubber is what separates this from the transmission. On the 39 style mount, the rubber biscuits is what keeps this from the hard mount on the frame. So depending on what style you have, if you're doing some kind of modification on a 36 Ford or anything crazy, this one has the rubber here and you can mount it solid to the frame. This one I definitely don't recommend mounting solid to the frame because one of the downfalls on these early transmissions is that these ears can break off, and when this breaks off, you better know a really good welder. Let's just say that. This is cast iron. It's a little bit more difficult to weld at home unless you really know what you're doing. So also look for those ears to be cracked when you're digging and trying to find some early transmissions for your build. Okay, so whenever I find a transmission out in the wild, the very first thing I do is take the top off. I want to know what's inside of it. Those inside gears could be not worth your time or the most important purchase you could make on early Ford. So like I said, there could be Zephyr gears in there. There could be non-synchronized, which I can show you here. And there could be actual synchronized, which anything with synchronizers on it, I'll buy it. Always worth having an early Ford transmission with synchronizers and having just the gear sets. If I'll be digging somewhere and I see some gear sets that will take the synchronizers, I always buy them because you never know, might run into a transmission that's blown up, yada, yada, yada. So you got to be able to know which one's which. Now, here is the Golden Beauty. And as you can see, this shaft and this shaft are two different shafts, but they're rusted together. Now, an uneducated person might look at this and go, that's trash, throw it away, because it's pretty nasty. But if we look at all the teeth and everything, no rounded edges, no broken teeth, it's actually in really good condition. It's just a little crummy. Clean it up. This is a gear set you would want to buy because it has the brass synchronizers here. Now, both transmissions are going to have the synchronizer teeth. That's what locks it into gear, the synchronizer teeth. But these transmissions either going to have brass synchronizers or no synchronizers. You want the one with the brass synchronizers, and that's what this looks like. You can see the brass there. And in this one, you'll see no brass synchronizers. And again, like I stated before, even easier than that, is the straight synchronizer hub or the offset synchronizer hub. So this one is going to take synchronizers, that hub is not. So real quick, I want to show you the difference between the really early transmission gears and this not so early transmission gears. So what we have here is like a 32 to 36-ish. There's a lot of if and ands and buts. Around 36, a lot of weird things changed. But obvious thing that it's early gear set is we have a straight cut first and reverse. Then a couple years later, around 36, we have a helical cut first reverse. Now I can tell you that this one is a lot louder, but it does not chip off tooths as easily. So I've seen guys hot rod every transmission you can get a hold of. These ones hold up a little bit better than helical cuts, only because of the ends of the teeth. So you can kind of see it in this video. Hopefully right here, you can see this one's actually ate up pretty good. And this one is not ate up as much. I'm just telling you what I see more than anything else. That's not a fact, but I rebuild about 3 of these a month. And on the straight gears, they're usually in better shape. The helical gut gears are usually in worse shape. So this one has been grinding so much that the output shaft is actually chipping away here. So on this rebuild, I recommend to replace first reverse and the output shaft because these are both ready to tank on somebody. So it's better to get that stuff, fix it now than being at a drag strip somewhere or going to an ice cream shop and have first blowout on you and you have to drive second, third all the way home. All right, so let's go over quickly the gear ratio, what makes it a Zephyr gear ratio or a generic gear ratio. So now this is what I consider a generic set with synchronizers. All the teeth's good, it's worth buying. This is the Zephyr gear setup. This is what you guys want to be out there looking for and or not getting robbed buying one of these thinking it's one of these. So let's get you guys set up accurately here. So we have our Zephyr gear input shaft, our normal gear input shaft for a 39. The Zephyr gear input shaft has 19 teeth. The 39 gear shaft has 16 teeth, okay? Now we're gonna go over here to our counter shaft down here. Our counter shaft down here is gonna be 25 teeth, this one down here. And our counter shaft down here is gonna be 28 teeth for a basic synchronized transmission. That is the easiest way, guys, to figure it out. First, both 29 teeth. Reverse, both 18 teeth. The output shaft is basically the same. So the output shaft for, depending on what year you have for 39, the output shaft's a little bit different depending on closed drive shaft or open drive shaft. So watch out for that. These are both closed drive shafts, so take a look there. So that's a closed. It has a screw in for the yoke right there. So does the other one, but the cutout here is different between open. So I don't have an open here to show you guys. So our second gear is also different. This is very significant. So generic second gear is going to have 22 teeth. The Zephyr gear is going to have 24 teeth. That's really important. So those are the differences. If I went through it too fast, just back up and rewatch it again. But when you're out there looking for Zephyr gears, this is what you're looking for. Or don't get screwed over by somebody who's selling you Zephyr gears that are really just a nice set of 39 gears, which is worth buying, but the prices are significantly different. All right, guys, I hope this helps. There's definitely a lot more we could go over, but I think those are the most important pieces you guys should be looking for or helping you to identify what you have or what you want to get. So Thank you for watching this video, guys. Now that you got this information, go out in your garage and get your shift together.